My name is Maria. I am 14 years old and I have lived half of my life in orphanages. Before, I used to live with my family, but they were very poor and they used to work outside of the city, so I usually lived with my grandma or with neighbors. I remember that at the end of the year, we would take out a table and have dinner outside together with my friends and my neighbors. To me, they were like my family. When I was placed in the first orphanage, I was told that I would stay there for only 3 months and that I would soon come back to my grandma. Many years had passed by. I was asked many times by the authorities if I wanted to come back with her. Regardless what I said, I was moved to further and further away institutions. Now I live so far away from my grandma that she cannot visit me anymore. If someone had told me why I was being placed in this institution, I would have been able to solve the situation. I know my grandma better than anyone, and I want to help her, so I want to come back to her. So many years have passed like this that I don't trust any adult anymore. The majority of us were able to grow up in a family, and the care and protection and support that our families gave us, in whatever form it has, together with a sense of belonging to our communities, made us who we are today. Unfortunately, living in a family is a privilege, and nowadays there are between 3 and 8 million children living in institutions and in other forms of care outside of their families. This is a global crisis with terrible consequences on the individual lives of children, since it is proved that children living in institutions are 4 times more exposed to sexual violence, 6 times more exposed to physical violence, and babies don't have the same developmental opportunities as those babies growing up within families. For many years, I worked for a Latin American network, and this gave me the opportunity to do field work and research and talk to many children living in institutions. Their life stories, some of them heartbreaking, like the one that I shared today, were the ones who led me to have a purpose related to protecting their rights and their well-being. Today, I would like to share with you some of the lessons I learned about how to make sure that our children grow up in families, and I would like to motivate you to take action to solve a societal issue you care about or you see around you in your societies. In order to understand why there are so many children living in institutions, it is important for you to know the cause, and the real reason is that in most countries, children live in institutions because that is the first response from their states for those situations when their families cannot take care of them, either because of discrimination, because of disabilities, or because of social marginalization. Even in those cases, when children are separate from their families due to violence, institutionalization always aggravates the situation and is detrimental in the long term. On the first week of March last year, me and my colleagues witnessed a very striking, very extreme example of this. When Guatemala had to mourn 41 teenage girls who were killed in a state-run institution paradoxically called Safe Home. The tragedy took place when a group of girls set mattresses on fire in order to riot against overcrowding, inadequate food, sexual abuse, and violence. Again, the majority of these girls had families outside of the institution. In fact, we can see them here mourning. They are girls in great distress because they loved them. And they could have been able to take care of the girls if they had had the necessary psychological and material help to do so. And even in those situations in which children seem to be happy and in which children get their material needs covered, children will suffer consequences in the long term because placing those children in institutions, instead of providing the necessary social welfare policies so that families can take care of them, feeds the vicious cycle of poverty. And once those children become young adults and leave the institution, most probably they won't have the necessary social network or preparation to live successful independent lives. I learned the solution to this problem from very well-meaning and very committed professionals who work around the world to make sure that children can grow up in families. Our work is guided by our passion and also by the guidelines and standards of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. This document, which was most probably signed by the states of your countries, establishes some standards as to how to achieve that every child grows up in a family. This is kind of technical, and it might be a little bit hard to understand if you are not in the child's rights sector, but even a child can understand it, and in fact, part of the solution is summarized in this drawing made by a child living in an institution, which says, when a family is going through a problematic situation, help has to be, like for instance, parents are on drugs and children are in need, help has to be sought after by other families or by foster families. So this means that in every country, there must be a child care and protection system in place that can offer different services, programs, and policies for the families of those children, not only institutionalizing them, which is the main response right now. The situation is that when a child is deemed to be an orphan, or when a family is going through a crisis situation, the private and public authorities must take a decision after going through a well-informed and thorough evaluation called the evaluation of the best interest of the child. So the evaluation of what is best for the child in that moment, in that situation. This evaluation has to take into account the child's opinion and preferences and should be respectful to his or her ethnic, religious, and cultural background. In the cases of those children who have families to come back to, or who have members of their community or relatives who would like to take care of them, the necessary policies and programs have to be provided to them. This can go from universal policies such as healthcare, education, nurseries, and sexual reproduction policies, to specialized programs like treatment centers for substance abuse, for the treatment of domestic violence, and specialized support for child-headed households. No matter what situation is taken as a sustainable and long-term solution for this child, while he has to wait for this solution, he or she should be able to live in a family, which would be a foster family, or in another form of family-like care. Usually people are familiar with the term of adoption because a legal bond is created between children and their new families, but not everyone knows foster care. So I will explain you that a foster family integrates children into its family in order to provide them with a safe and caring environment until a final situation is decided upon. So until the child comes back to his or her family of origin, until he or she is adopted, or he or she becomes an independent young adult and can start living his or her independent life. These families can be related to the child, so they can be friends, neighbors, or other acquaintances. And in fact, the practice of fostering children spontaneously has existed for millennia across all cultures of the world. Many states know this, and they have turned this cultural practice into well-organized programs by which families that are unrelated to the child are recruited either by the state or NGOs and take care of these children temporarily because they want to show their solidarity for those children and families going through crisis. I want you to understand the positive impact that these policies can have on a child. So I will tell you the story of Tobias, of the foster family of Tobias, mainly the foster mom Inés, Maria Inés, and his adopted families, Roberto and Mirta. Some years ago, the government of Paraguay decided to close a baby's institution called El Hogarcito. At El Hogarcito, Tobias lived and has spent all of his short life there. He was 2 years old when the home started being closed down and when the government started looking for families, either adopted or foster families or the own families of the babies, so that they could come back to some kind of family. At the same time, Maria Inés started working as a nurse in that institution. And she was shocked when she arrived to see so many very small, unfortunate babies cramped up in the same space. Very soon, she fell in love with Tobias. It was her favorite baby. When So even though she had children, she had already raised 5 children and 1 grandchild. When the opportunity arose to become the foster family of Tobias, she didn't hesitate. And it was not a long time after that Tobias started blossoming thanks to the love of Maria Inés and her family. Even though when he was at the institution, he was not able to walk or speak, and he was really frightful about all people, after 3 months of living with Maria Inés, he started talking, he started walking, he became much more confident, and this led him to start asking about his family, his real family or final family. Maria Inés and her husband said to Tobias all of the time that they were not his real family, that they were just a temporary family, that his real or final family lived very far away from them, and they would pick him up sometime on a plane. So they would come by plane to pick him up. For this reason, every time Tobias heard an airplane passing over them, he would ask them if that was the plane where his parents were coming to pick him up. After 1 year, an adoptive family was found for Tobias. They were a very nice, very loving couple who liked him really, really much. When the final adoption decision was made, Tobias's foster parents and the adoptive family, the future parents, decided that they would make Tobias' dream come true. Even though they lived kind of near one from the other, they decided that the best place for Tobias to meet his future parents would be at the airport. So they staged a meeting at the airport, and it was the most important day of the life of all of them, because on the 23rd of December, so 1 day before Christmas Eve, they got together at the airport. And when Tobias saw the parents coming down the hall, sorry, I was told the story by them, so it brings me memories. When they saw Tobias and Tobias saw them coming down the hall, he ran towards them with his little strength, his little feet, and he hugged them like if he had known them since ever. 10 years have passed by since then. This is Tobias today. He is 10 years old now. And his parents, his adopted parents, still love him very, very, very much. They are very proud of him, and they are very happy to see that he has become a very good boy, a very good person, and that he's a football fan also. And he's very helpful to them, and they are really, really happy to have him in their lives. Maria Inés says that fostering Tobias was the best thing that she has done in her life. And she, since then, has fostered other babies coming out from the institution, from the Hogarcito. She believes that fostering these children is the best heritage she can leave to her biological children. And that she is very fulfilled, she feels very happy every time she sees a child coming out from the institution, passing through the foster family, and then to the adopted family. So this is a very good example that family life for all children will be only achieved once the state has a commitment. Because this story, very nice story, happy ending of Tobias, was made possible because of the extreme focus and cooperation of the state and international organizations and national organizations. And most probably, in most of our countries, family life for every child will be made possible only when it becomes a priority in the agendas of our governments and decision makers. However, right now, there's something that each one of us can do to make sure that children live in safe and caring families, and hopefully in protective, supporting, and caring societies. Okay. I hope that these stories that I shared with you today will motivate you to find a purpose that has to do with improving the lives of those whose rights have been denied and whose dreams have been denied also. I know that each one of us can do something to make our societies better and to help accomplish the rights of these children. And in my opinion, that is an idea much worth spreading. So thank you very much for listening to it.